participating in this special meeting tonight. I'm Debbie Skipczynski. I'm chair of NPU-F, and we're joined tonight with Councilmember Alex Wan, who you've seen on screen already, who's responsible for not only scheduling this meeting, but also doing the legwork for getting us the up-to-date materials that we need. And ensuring that the council committee process has been slowed down to allow the community an opportunity to understand the changes. Before we get started, I'd like to note the passing of a former NPU-F chair, J.D. Christie. J.D. was chair in the mid-1990s, just before the Atlanta Olympics. He was also a past president of the Virginia Highlands Civic Association, a member of the John Howell Park Board, as well as an active member of the Alliance of In-Town Neighbors. He was a good friend and a neighbor, and for many years, we called him the mayor of Virginia Highland because he never met a stranger and was amazingly informed on everything that was going on in the neighborhood. You can find JD's obituary and his life story by Googling online for his obituary, and it is quite a story. So can we just have a short moment of silence to honor his many years of neighborhood and NPU-F service? Okay, thank you.
Debbie, you're back on mute for some reason.
Thank you. So, as you've all heard, the NPU-F process is now complete for Amsterdam Walk. We fulfilled our requirement to make a recommendation on Amsterdam Walk last summer, and that recommendation does not change. What has changed is that Portman has amended several aspects of their plans, and it's important that you are updated so that you can participate in the final steps in the rezoning process with accurate information. We have several goals for tonight. We want to share the updated site plan and amended conditions for the proposed Amsterdam Walk project with you. We want to review and update the NPU's concerns and objections to the project, and we want to explain the remaining citizen engagement steps prior to the city council vote. So that we can make the most of this meeting, we will be following the same protocol that we use at other NPU-F meetings. We will follow an agenda, and I've just put that in the chat. I'm asking you to please keep your device on mute until you're called on so that everyone can hear. Please, only one person speaks at a time, and please speak only once on a topic. The chat is available to make comments or ask questions to an individual or everyone in the room. It will be monitored throughout the meeting. If you want to speak, use the raise your hand icon. You will be called on in the order hands go up. If you haven't already, please locate the icon on your device. It's either at the bottom or the top, depending on which version of Zoom you're using. Please don't wave your hands on screens. There are just too many folks in the room, so you'll be unable to see you. If I don't call on you immediately, it could mean that I haven't seen you or I'm ignoring you until we get to a logical break. And please don't interrupt. It's not fair to the others in the room. Also, when you're speaking, please stay on topic, avoid repeating comments others have made, avoid arguments with others and expressing opinions. This will help keep the meeting on track. We know that there are differing opinions in the room, but we are not here to change minds tonight. When speaking or writing in the chat, please be respectful. If comments are inappropriate, mean-spirited, or snarky, I'll shut down the chat. We're observing time limits tonight for speakers, allowing up to 2 minutes for comments or questions, and that'll allow everyone a chance to speak. We have a timekeeper tonight, and he'll give you a warning before the time has elapsed. And a reminder, and I'll remind you at the end of the meeting, you can keep a copy of the chat by clicking on 3 dots in the chat window. And that usually does work for everyone. So now let's get the discussion started, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Councilmember Juan.
Thanks, Debbie, and thanks everybody for being on here. I know that it feels like there's a lot of information coming at everybody, so we're just trying to get it out as quickly as possible, and then have this chance to go through it and try and answer questions to the best that I can. One of my biggest goals tonight is to try. I'll talk about the process from here, but part of that is to try and inventory as many new questions and new issues. I think the community's done a really good job articulating the concerns from the initial iteration, much of which hasn't changed, but the ones that arise out of the revisions from the what has surfaced over the last couple of weeks or 10 days, I would say. All right, with that, I'm kind of just going to go in and talk a little bit about, I want to talk about the Invest Atlanta action that happened last week, just to help everyone understand as best I can what that meant and what it doesn't mean. What Invest Atlanta did was to essentially approve a legal vehicle that would then allow the city to provide an easement, a long-term easement, 99 years, for Evelyn Street. Watershed cannot provide a permanent easement for that road to create a second entrance to the property because of the bonds that were used and issued to pay for the CSO facility. So this was a device that they concocted with Invest Atlanta to be able to facilitate the use of Evelyn Street. And if y'all recall, that was one of the conditions that the community placed on the project, that there had to be another entrance into the property. That legal vehicle also ties the affordability requirement to the property for that same duration. Most of you who've been following city news know that affordable housing is a major priority of Mayor Dickens. It was also tied to the piece of land that the Beltline owns parallel to the Beltline that's currently in the parking lot back behind the development closest to the Beltline. In exchange for being able to get that, they tied an affordability component on the housing, and they also tied an affordability piece on the commercial retail space. This was not, their action was not an approval of the project. What that meant was that the city council could then it releases our process where we can talk about the land use change that is being contemplated, as well as the zoning case, the zoning parameters. So I just wanted to make sure everyone understood what that did and what it didn't do. So the new proposal that is out from Portman, and those documents have been circulated. I hope you'll take a look at it. I have the site plan, which I can pull up in a second. It does a couple of things. Number one is it affirms that the Evelyn Street entrance it's going to follow the original street. There's not going to be a new street cut. That street is actually going to be expanded to 3 lanes, and they're going to install a tree-lined sidewalk along that way. The current ticket booth to get to the parking deck is going to be pushed further down Evelyn, away from Monroe, closer to the Beltline, and then there'll be a turnoff before you get to the ticket gate to go to the proposed property. Second thing that it does is it does not materially change the square footage of the property. What it does are 2 things. Number one is it moves the maximum height of the development throughout from, I think they had it 1715 in different variations, down to 9 feet. And the other thing what that does also is it removes all the towers and essentially squashes the proposed building down, and accomplishes the 1.13, I think, million square feet of space. The third thing, oh, the other thing, it also shifts the composition of the residential. Increases that and decreases the proportion that was originally contemplated for commercial. The third thing it does is they were talking about acquiring the right of way. There's a 50-foot right of way that exists currently between Highland Walk, those properties, and the proposed development. That is owned by the Atlanta Department of Transportation or the city. This abandons that and essentially can maintain that distance from the property to the proposed development. And there's some other top changes in there. There's some changes around the definitions of open space. And I think, Debbie, at this point, I think what I want to do is at least just pull up the site plan,
Sure.
just so that folks, if that's okay.
You should be able to share your screen.
There it is. Okay. I was like, if I can find it. All right. So hopefully y'all can see this, right? Just to give your bearings, this is Monroe Drive here at the bottom. This is Evelyn Street, so that you can affirm that the alignment is same as the current street. You should be able to, you should all have a copy of this via the documents that were shared out to the community. But let me see if I can figure out. There we go. Let me get rid of that. Okay. I like to zoom in on a couple of things. This right here is that 50-foot property that I was just talking about. That is between Highland Walk homes and the property. So whereas they were originally trying to purchase that, they've abandoned that. The other thing, if I can, yep, there we go. What I wanted to do was go over to I am not as good at this as I'm trying to get over to the panel that shows the different square footage compositions, and I don't see my scroll button. Oh, wait, there it is. Oh, I just had it. Okay, I'm going to give that up. And so, as you can see, this is the proposed site plan. All right, I'm going to stop sharing this. And then what I want to do now is go to the redlined conditions. Nope, that did not do it. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So these were the original conditions that were proposed by Portman in conversation with the civic associations at Morningside as well as Virginia Highland, and then brought forward to the NPU. And the red lines show what has changed. First off, the date stamp on the site plan changes to the version that I just showed you. This is the first piece in terms of the open space calculation. It takes out the balconies. I'm sorry, it puts that back in. And my understanding of this is that it reverts back to the city's current definition of the calculation of usable open space. So that original concession has been removed. So this one, the square footage has increased, as you see, from 940,000 to 1.18 million. And then they set a maximum of 190,000 for non-residential square foot usage. before it was that number, and now they're saying they want the ability to go up to it. But I understand from answers to the questions that the community provided, which I'll refer to in a second, their intent is only to build 150,000 square feet. Item number 27 is the height that I mentioned. The way the city works right now is we use feet rather than actual stories, but they did just go ahead and add in language that says it will not exceed 9 stories above grade. The 28 and 29 are around, well, protected properties. They took some of those out in terms of the plane, transitional high plane. And so they added and made some changes in 29. And I believe this one at item C is just a grammatical correction. And the balconies on this were removed. This is because of the 50-foot buffer. Because they're not purchasing it, they would need to, if they want to do balconies, they would not be able to go over that buffer zone, which was what their original intent was. So without that ability, they're taking this concession out. And okay, those are all of the proposed changes to the conditions. I mentioned a second ago about the questions that everyone, the community had submitted. I got the answers, and this is my fault. I got the answers late this afternoon. We were in full council until almost 6 o'clock. So I have not had a chance to get those responses into the hands of the neighborhood leaders to push out again. But I'm going to fly through them very, very quickly. So hopefully I might be able to preempt some of the questions and conversation that will come up. I will find a way to get this out to everybody via those same channels. First, Civic Association, I think Virginia Highland, thank you for compiling this and then kind of categorizing them. First categories around financial. There was a question about how much the property would be generating in property taxes every year. The answer is when fully constructed, the estimated property taxes annually will be $6.5 million. There were a lot of questions regarding Portman asking and encouraging Portman to support the Beltline and Beltline Rail. I think that's outside of the scope of the conditions that we're talking about. Again, those were questions that folks had raised last time, so I'm not going to repeat those. Question about who instigated the design change. The answers essentially are basically they are playing a numbers game. They're trying to get to 8 votes on council to pass this, and the revisions apparently reflect trying to address the community concerns that the council members that they talked to were echoing. A lot of that stems from the Sub-Area 6 master plan. They do acknowledge that they're not comporting completely to that. I did want to, there was a question later on, but that's generally the genesis of this last iteration from their responses. Regarding the design and building height, there was a lot of talk about open space and public gathering spaces. And then why a lot of that was has been removed, at least from the renderings that have been shown. Their response is once you squash the height down, you basically, the buildings have to get wider and you don't have as much flexibility or opportunity for those open spaces, but they still were going to try and do what they could once they got into actual design. There's a question about implementing green roofs. They are interested in that. They said, however, because of the height reduction, they can no longer construct this via steel and concrete, which would support weight of a more active green roof. They're going to wood construction, but they are still open to trying to do an inactive green roof for they have, I mean, part of it they have to anyway because of the city stormwater requirements. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. There was a question about finishes, brick and stone, versus glass and steel. That's going to be worked on in the design process after zoning. But they did say that those were reasonable requests, and Portman is interested in aesthetics and placemaking. I talked about the Evelyn Street widening because there were some questions about how this would utilize Evelyn versus Amsterdam, and their intent is to make that function more like the front entrance to the project. There was also questions about 10th and Monroe, as well as the residential side streets along Monroe. 10th and Monroe is outside the scope of this project, but just know that that's still being worked on, and there's a group of neighbors that are working on this Monroe Safer Streets project. We actually have a meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And then there are some improvements that are being contemplated for the intersections along the way. But I would definitely, the side street kind of adjustments, improvements or traffic calming measures on there, I would definitely work with MLPA. We've been talking already in anticipation of the Monroe Safer Streets impact to try and make recommendations through the neighborhood associations for that. Let's see, more rail and streetcar and beltline. Also question about the interface with the property and if it is light rail or a streetcar. There is a corridor along the edge of the property, roughly 40 feet wide, where the streetcar would be located if it comes through. The ground floor of the project was raised to align with the future elevation of light rail or streetcar and situated close to the line. There is a public plaza adjacent to the anticipated future stop of where Amsterdam essentially runs all the way down to the Beltline. And another one at the Evelyn crossing as well. That one's would not be like an official rail stop, apparently. What else? Infrastructure improvements around roads, sewer, and water are done during construction, not before. There was a question about that, as is the phase 1 environmental study. That's done as part of development as well. Someone asked if that had been completed. And then I mentioned that they're planning to build 150,000 square feet of non-residential. The plan is no office and all retail. The condition for stepping the building back that was originally requested by Highland Park along that side has not been changed. And that one's a little more technical. The construction time, if they get the zoning and the economy stays stable or on a slight upward momentum, they want to start by the end of summer 2026 with construction lasting 2.5 years. 20% of the new rental residential units would be affordable, and that's at 80% of AMI. And it's their understanding that the residential units would be part of the Midtown cluster. Okay. I think those are kind of the high level answers to the questions. And like I said, I will get with the folks that help distribute the original documents to try and get that out as soon as I can tomorrow. All right. I want to acknowledge the original NPU-F objections. First one is around scale and the size of the project that has been received, as well as the 14-story residential towers being too tall. There was concern about access to the project being insufficient for the density, especially during peak hours. There's a lot of conversation about the traffic, increased traffic in Monroe, and the traffic study being not being done for weekend and summer, well, actually any Piedmont Park events. There was concerns about the parking spaces, again, just acknowledging all this, and concern about the trees that are being displaced by this. So again, just want to bank those. Those are already in the universe of information. Hopefully there'll be other new ones that I can inventory down again to share with the appropriate folks at the city, be that planning, be that Department of Transportation, and ultimately it'll be to the members of City Council, both the Community Development Committee, Zoning Committee, and then full council. So let's talk about that for a second, and then I think we can get to the conversation. The way the process works is the two papers are currently held in committee. The next opportunity for them to come forward out of committee will be a week from today. Zoning committee meets on Monday at 10 o'clock. And then community development, which is the land use paper, is at 1:30 on Tuesday. If they do not move out of committee next week, it'd be another 2 weeks before they could come up again in committee. If they do move out of committee next week, then they will go to full council on March 17th at 1 o'clock. And that both papers would be before full council for deliberation and vote. Y'all are all welcome to come and watch those meetings. However, I should point out for those that are not familiar with this process, by code, public comment, that period officially ended at the zoning review board meeting on this application, as well as the community development plan quarterly hearing that's already taken place. And you cannot speak to that these at full council either. You cannot speak to a specific case. You can come down and talk about general topics like, listening to community voice, or I mean, just very broad stroke generic comments, but you just cannot speak specifically to an application. The committee chairs and the council president will kind of warn or shut that down as needed. I do not sit on either zoning or community development. I will say that my colleagues have obviously been asking me questions about this because of the emails that everyone has been sending. I did want to have this meeting to be able to take more information to them between now and Monday and Tuesday of next week. But I know that the applicant is also actively in conversation with many of them as well. So, Debbie, was there anything else that we were talking about that we wanted to cover before we opened it up for just general conversation?
I think that was it.
Okay, and I know I moved very quickly through all this are in the documents that y'all have at your should have access to, but I look forward to the questions and conversation around this tonight. And again, let's try and focus on the new stuff because the old stuff is already kind of banked, and we'll go from there.
Okay, as a reminder, I'm going to call on folks in the order that your hands have gone up. We do have a timekeeper, and we're asking you to please respect the 2-minute time limit. Kevin will give you a warning when your time is running out, but he will mute you if you go on much too long. And Alex, we do have some questions in the chat we'll get through after we've talked to folks if these issues haven't come up.
Yeah, I'm glancing through them now, but yeah, let's go through the comments first.
Okay, first person with the hand up is Todd Green. Todd.
Hi there, Alex. Sorry, just a second. The reason that you're hearing this sound is that I am here. As you know, Alex, I live on Amsterdam Avenue, just west of Monroe Drive, and I'm here with my neighbors, all of us who own either single family or duplex homes on the street. I've been living in my home for 27 years. And no one, even though I've tried, no one has ever addressed what's going to happen on Amsterdam Avenue, because we won't be able to back out of our driveways under the current condition. So I'm just curious about at what point does anyone ever address, or has anyone ever been interested in getting opinions or the concerns about how we are supposed to maneuver, especially because my understanding is that the street parking is going to be eliminated. So, and as you know, I'm a former board member on Invest Atlanta, so I believe in the city progressing. And I believe that there should be progress, but I also think that it should be done responsibly. And I do think the concerns of myself and my neighbors who were sitting around right here with someone should be listening to us. So I'm just curious if you know what is going to happen. How are we supposed to back out of our driveways?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that, but I wrote down concerns about ingress and egress on Amsterdam for the residents that live on that.
You have to do.
Oh.
Do we,
Are
Debbie,
you
you want?
Are we ready for the next, next person? Next is Charlie Cafton.
Yes, good evening. My name is Charlie Cafton, and this discussion has been going on for over a year. The NPU-F voted 77% against this project. The project design, if anything, has gotten worse rather than better. What is being proposed, it's wrong and is going to have negative impacts on the neighborhood forever. I am calling on Alex Wan to do two things. One, Alex Wan should respect the vote of the NPU-F and oppose the Portman applications and state it publicly, finally. And two, and more importantly, Alex Wan should do what he can to convince the rest of the city council members to defeat this proposal and vote no and save the community from overdevelopment. Thank you.
Yeah, I received that. Thanks.
Thanks, Charlie. Sharon Cohen. Sharon, you need to unmute. There
Thank
go.
you. Alex, I appreciate you bringing this to us. I know that this might have come as a surprise for you as well, and I'm sorry about that. And I guess I'm curious how Invest Atlanta plays into this. How is it that now they're doing an end run against the NPU vote, the NPU board vote, the neighbors vote, the ZRB vote to deny with the 1,400 parkings, all of that? How is that done, and how can you help us? Because at this point, after 2 years of trying to chase after this, and all of these different committees have been, I guess, recommendations. They're not binding, is what we found out. How can you help us, Alex? Have you been able to successfully lobby with any of these other council members in the past? And what do you recommend? Thank you.
First of all, the Invest Atlanta was not an approval of the project. Again, they were trying to just facilitate Watershed's request to figure out a way to be able to grant a long-term easement to the property, not to the property, for Evelyn, for use by the development. So I just want to make sure that that's really clear. And they had a vested interest in this simply because of the affordable housing piece of it. But in terms of the approval of the project, that was not in their hands. That is in City Council's hands. So I wanted to address that piece of it. Yeah, I've had conversations with my colleagues. I mean, to Charlie's point, I don't think it's a big secret that I'm voting against this. I think I was trying to play those cards pretty close to my chest so that I could stay in the room in conversations. But as soon as that word got out, I mean, there was a small group that knew, but somehow it did get to Portman. So they've kind of cut me out of the conversation, to be honest with y'all. So now it is up to me to try and convince my colleagues. Generally speaking, there is a thing called ward courtesy, where the district council member, council members tend to respect their position on this. But I'll tell you that has not held 100% this term with the new council members. So we're going to have to see what happens. But you know, there you have it. But yeah, I'm having conversations with them. But I think Portman's new proposal indicates to me that, and then my not being aware that they were going to Invest Atlanta indicates to me that they think they have a path. So
And so I guess I'm wondering with the Invest Atlanta piece that you mentioned, how are they able to up the rental units? Like, how does that happen after the vote of the community has closed?
They were, their resolution include approximately 240 units of rental housing, and that's consistent. And basically the requirement is 20%. So that's kind of consistent with the square footage that was being contemplated for residential on this property. I don't know that they necessarily were approving a higher unit. They just were calculating off of what they understood the new proposal or the new split proportion of residential to commercial was on the property.
No, I just mean, how did they get up to 1,100 units now? That's what I'm wondering, when it was 840 that was agreed by the NPU.
Yeah, as I mentioned previously, the revised thing, I mean, none of that the vote from the NPU is always a recommendation. And I saw a question in the chat about this. Between the NPU vote and the ZRB vote, the property, the developer can always continue to edit and adjust what they put before council. Most times they don't do that because everybody's in agreement in terms of it moving through as is, and they don't want to jeopardize that when it comes to council's vote. But like I said, in this situation, they've chosen a different path. So.
Okay, we can go on to the next question, please, Debbie.
Yeah,
Thanks, Kevin.
Stephanie Elser, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
Not a problem at all. Thank you for organizing this, and thanks, Alex, for being here. I think what stands out to me is the first person who spoke was gathered with their neighbors, and I thought that was just a really lovely encapsulation of everything that makes Virginia Highland and Morningside such a special place to live. And I appreciate the discourse on this topic, but it's obvious to me, and I think a lot of people on the call, that Portman doesn't have the best interest of the neighborhood in mind. And they're concerned more about their own profit than the things that make this neighborhood special. And so I appreciate, Alex, that you've said you're opposed to this. My question is, who specifically on city council should we be reaching out to make our voices clear?
That's a great question at this point. I don't know. I think everybody first, as y'all have already begun doing, focus on the committee members of CDHS and zoning. And then from there, depending on what their actions are next week, then expand out to full council. It's a full court press at this point, depending on whether it moves out of committee next week. Okay,
thank you.
The reason I don't have a sense of who's in the yes column or the no column. I haven't taken that inventory yet.
Makes sense. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Allison Vincent? Allison? Okay, I think we've lost.
I don't know if you're talking, but you're not on. You're still on mute.
Oh, Lord.
Okay.
Allison Vincent?
Going once, going twice.
All right, then we're going to move on to the Palombos, either Paulo or Alessandra.
Yeah, hi Debbie, thanks for setting this meeting up, and thanks Alex for being here. Not much of a question because Charlie asked a question I wanted to ask, but a couple of comments. One is that I wrote to the council members, and I got a reply from Matt Westmoreland, who I believe is the chair of the one of the two committees, that he's going to vote against the Portman proposal in line with the NPU-F recommendation from the last month of May. So at least that's one no.
Yeah.
And I wish there were more, but let's start from there. The other thing is that one of the things I don't like you said, Alex, Portman is certainly talking to the council members and telling their story and their narrative. And as I can see from the documentation that we got from the MLPA Association, one of the things they say is that they received some of the recommendation from the NPU because they are not building high towers anymore. and they received the recommendation from the sub-area 6 because they are limiting the height to 9 stories. The recommendation from sub-area 6 were not to limit the height to 9 stories. They were to limit the height to 9 stories in the middle of Amsterdam Walk and 1 to 4 stories in front of the Beltline and in front of Highland Park Lane, which is where we live, right? So at the very least, I really hope that you are helping telling your colleagues that Portman can say all they want. They are not receiving the recommendation of the NPU-F. They are not receiving the recommendation of Sub-Area 6. They are not receiving the recommendation of Atlanta Plan 2.0, that all of those put more severe limits. So I really find it disheartening to think that council members,
Please, to wrap.
I mean,
Rev our 2 minutes, please.
sorry, you're not on mute. If you can let me finish. Okay, so anyway, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it's a time limit, but I think I made my point, Alex. You see where I was going.
Yeah. One thing I will say, Atlanta Plan 2.0 right now has not been adopted yet. So that is, folks know what's in it, but it's not an official guideline for us just yet. So I just wanted to at least put that. But your point's well taken.
Thanks, Paulo. Claire Pesh?
Okay, when we attended the zoning meeting, representative of Portman confessed that if they did not get permission to have at least 1,400 parking spaces and, you know, at least the 940 units and so forth, they would not be able to get the financing that they needed in order to develop the space. So my observation here is that they are trying to maintain those minimum requirements for their financing, no matter how they can adjust the program, which is against our interest. Because what we're concerned about is all those people living over there, filling up Monroe Drive and Evelyn Street and all that, you know, and making our neighborhood almost inaccessible during certain times of the day. So that's kind of my question here. You know, it seems to be like it needs to be put to them, you know, if you can't reduce the number of apartments or condos or whatever, people and parking spaces, what can you do here? You see?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I acknowledge that, you know, MPU's objections were around size and scope and traffic. I think the parking goes along with the size and scope, but I appreciate that.
Thank you, Claire. Tim Langen?
Yeah, hey, no, appreciate you being here, Alex. Hey, I was not on the Virginia Highlands Civic Association board last year, which voted in conditional approval, as did the MLPA, the people that helped to negotiate these conditions. I was just going to make a couple points. They may be obvious to some people and to others not, but I'm wondering how. I was conditionally for it, particularly the site plan just prior to this one. But with the applicant not looking to increase the allowable buildable square footage on this property, it's a real close number to what's allowed on the property today. Just looking to do it as a different mix of residential and commercial, willing to cap their parking spaces well under what's allowed on this site today. And, you know, a condition where all tree recompense stays on the property versus paying into a fund. Those other things, how you can have council votes that vote something down that aren't defendable in court. And that's what this one kind of sounds like to me, Alex. Like, they're not asking to build anything bigger than's allowed here. They're not asking to put any more traffic on there. They already have their ARC, Atlanta Regional Commission traffic study approved. If they're denied on those positions, how's that? I mean, I'm just curious, how's that legally defensible for the city? Again, if they were asking to double the size of this, double the number of parking spaces allowed, not any, you know, no conditions around trees, not doing anything, I can see it, but I just don't see how, you know, that this would be defensible, that kind of vote.
defensible in terms of an approval or denial? I'm confused here.
Defensible in court to tell them they can't build this size
I know.
building when they're allowed to do it today.
know.
To tell them that it's too much traffic when that much is allowed today. How's that defensible? I mean, just because you do have to negotiate with somebody in that context for this high profile of a piece of property, in a part of the city that's just not going to sit there, right? So anyhow, that's kind of my question. It doesn't appear to be. It's just hope they don't challenge it after that, I guess.
Yeah, that's really a question for our law department. In terms of, I mean, you could be right, and if this project gets the rezoning gets rejected, I'm sure if that is the case, Portman will pursue that. But I don't know that train of thought generally will enter in our conversation or dialogue about rezonings. I think unless the law department comes and tells us otherwise.
Okay.
Thanks, Tim. Next up is Hernan Bello.
Hi, yes. I just want to second what Mr. Kaftin said earlier. Thank you, and thank Alex for voicing his opposition to this project. I mean, we're just maybe 1 week to 3 weeks away. So I really appreciate you making this statement and making this position public and known for everybody. I think this new proposal is the worst that we've seen. It's actually kind of insulting to even the associations who voted for it initially. And I want to know, what is your plan to get your other council members to vote with you and oppose this application? Because as you know, they've had 8 months to lobby, all of those people in council, and we just have the votes that we as a community have put forth in NPU and the votes of the CRB. So now with you and Matt Westmoreland, who are our only representatives in council, do you guys have a plan to move everybody else on your no column?
Well, I mean, I think I kind of explained at the beginning. Obviously, the objections and the points that y'all have been making, I bank those, and they'll be part of the conversation. If there's anything new that comes out of tonight, that will get added onto that. And then it's just a matter of conversation first with members of zoning and then members of CDHS. It's just a race to the votes. I mean, to be honest with you. So, I mean, that's always been the plan and the strategy. It's with any case. So ahead of sorry, my dog is going nuts. But yeah, it's no different from any other plan project that comes before us in any district. The one thing I would remind everybody is that the NPU as well as the ZRB votes are merely recommendations and not binding in terms of to the city. So they're important input factors. But generally speaking, we do see a number of projects that come to us that the NPU supports, the ZRB supports, but planning opposes, and those don't go through sometimes. And then the other way around, we've seen combinations where the neighborhood and the ZRB reject, but planning supports, and those go through. So it's somewhat unpredictable, but I just didn't want folks to think, oh, those are all requirements or binding on the city.
Thanks, Anand. Jennifer Hansen.
Hi, thank you, Alex. I appreciate you convening the community in this way. Appreciate your support of listening to us, and I'm glad to hear that you're going to honor the recommendation of the community and vote against this. One of the things I just heard you talking about, and again, you went through a lot of information quickly, but when we talk about traffic and traffic downstream, down Monroe, what that does, and through the neighborhood, what I heard was that is outside the scope. I don't think we can say that the impact of this development, that we can say anything is outside of scope. That, I feel like we are seeing impacts. Monroe is already horrible, but as we see this cut through traffic, it makes it incredibly dangerous for our students at the schools. We have more wrecks. And I think these are things that you are certainly already aware of. But I think this really needs to be highlighted with the council. I see somebody behind me with their hand up that has more to say specifically about the danger that is at that particular intersection. So I'm going to leave that to Aaron and Byron to talk directly about that. But also the other thing I wanted to make note of this is that I feel like in all of these negotiations that there's been this discussion about that if we don't acquiesce to this, that Portman's Portman that will do this, if that if they don't do it, someone else will. I don't want our city council to think of it in that term, because it's like we're picking between the evil we know versus the evil we don't. And our community deserves more than choosing the least evil. Our city council owes it to the community to identify and support responsible development that is in keeping with walkability and safety for our current residents. And so I want to find ways that we can encourage our city council to vote against this, and however we can support you in swinging those votes, making sure that they listen to you as the representative of this community, and the vote of the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Aaron Kirkpatrick.
Hi, my name's Henry. I'm 12 years old, and 2 weeks ago, my grandma got hit by a car at the intersection we're talking about, and I wanted to know what we're gonna do to make it safer for people.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question, and I know that Lance in my office has been talking to your family about this. We actually have a meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock with some couple of representatives from each one of the neighborhoods about the Monroe Drive project. That is from Armour Yards, which is where the Beaufort Highway Connector, all the way to Ponce. And it includes significant intersection improvements for safety. Park Drive in Monroe is going to become a roundabout. Amsterdam, there are a number of different intersections and crossings across Monroe that will have additional pedestrian. Some of it will be lights and signals, and kind of like the Hawk signal that's down at the end closest to Piedmont. Tomorrow will be kind of our first chance to really dive into that. I've been trying to push that project since 2015, and I feel like I'm this close to getting it at least initiated. My understanding it's at 60% design. We might be able to get to 100% and out to bid by end of the year, beginning of next year, so we can get some of these improvements underway as soon as possible. I'm really sorry to hear about your grandma. I'm glad she's doing better, but I know she has a long road of recovery ahead of her. And so I'm using that with the Department of Transportation to convince them this is a very dangerous corridor, and these improvements that we've been working on for 10 years can't wait anymore. And then, yeah, that is one of the considerations, as y'all pointed out, to use with my colleagues. But I mean, there's a whole package of reasons why that I'll be sharing with them.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your question and for being here.
Yeah. Future council member, maybe.
Yeah, right. Allison Vincent, are you back? Allison?
Okay, can you hear me this time?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Before, for some reason, I couldn't get the mute to go off. So this concern is somewhat specific, but it also has to do with the city setting a precedent, I guess, for future development. Our zoning regulations kind of clearly outline landscape, area, and buffer requirements between zoning districts and land uses to kind of ensure appropriate separation between these kind of different land uses. And so here we've got the situation with fairly high density development going in right next to these single family residences. And so the reason I'm saying this is because this is somewhat of a change in this new list of conditions. But in past designs, there was a 20-foot setback to any, from any buildings to the property line. I know at least, especially along the southern border that abuts the Orem Circle residences, that now appears to have been removed. and structured parking decks are directly abutting the property lines of single family residences. I mean, I could be wrong. The plan that was released is very minimal and doesn't provide a lot of information, but it does look like it's saying that those parking decks go directly to the property line. And as noted on line 14 of the conditions, it describes that condition as well. So what I'm concerned about is, why are we allowing parking decks to have a 0-foot setback from this, development to any residential lots, without any kind of screening or buffering that the city of Atlanta has always required in the past? We're giving them we're giving them kind of a carte blanche to do what they want around their perimeter of the property, which seems like we're setting a poor precedent. Secondly, when I look at conditions 28 and 29, they've given that like a 50-foot buffer, and they've given stricter height considerations along the Highland Park lane homes of 15 feet, but they've only given 35 feet along the Orm Circle. So again, there's this disparity of kind of almost a priority or preference for some residences over others, which confuses me.
All right, so to that, you raise a great point that I'm going to have to check with planning in terms of, is it meeting the city's requirements in terms of buffer transition now that the project is different along the edges where it abuts up against the back
particularly the southern.
Yeah.
Particularly
And then yeah, and I'll see what I can find out about the Highland Walk versus Orm Circle, the different treatment there. So duly noted. That's a new point. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Allison. Jennifer?
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a two-part question. It's about Invest Atlanta. I'm curious how Portman managed to do the end run around the NPU in order to get the easement on Evelyn Street. And also, has Invest Atlanta offered any tax abatements to Portman for this development?
Okay, so it wasn't an end run necessarily from the neighborhood.
Well, it was an end run. I mean, obviously, they had that Watershed couldn't do it, and so they figured out a way that it could be done.
Yes, and just have to remember, Invest Atlanta is the redevelopment authority of the city. And so to the extent that Watershed wanted to facilitate this transaction by giving the easement, that's
why did Watershed want to do that?
I'll have to ask Watershed. I can't answer that question.
But you represent us, and Watershed is part of the city.
Yes, but Watershed is a department on the administration, not they don't report to city council. We're on the legislative branch and they're on the executive. So I don't know why. I'm quite frankly surprised. In fact, the meeting with Hernan and Charlie recently, I was always very skeptical that this would be done, but somehow they found a legal way to do it. So
have some money changed hands.
I think that's an easy accusation. I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but nevertheless, that is water under the bridge, and it's already. I mean, that piece is done. What's before us now is the city council actions, and so it's what we're focused on tonight.
Okay. And the question about tax abatements?
I think the only thing, I don't know, the strip of land the Beltline owns mentioned that follows in the parking lot of Amsterdam Walk now that parallels the Beltline. I don't know if that was a transfer or a purchase by property owner, but the condition on that was the affordable housing requirement, as well as the affordable commercial requirement. So that was the deal, if you want to call it that.
Okay, and just a little point. If they basically decide, say this whole project goes through as planned, and they renege on the idea of affordable housing, pay their fine, what happens to all the kind of abatements that they got along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there are any abatements that they're getting. I'm not aware of any tax
They
abatements
got
that,
some Beltline,
sorry?
they got some Beltline land.
Right. Again, in exchange for the affordable requirement and incorporating that
And
in.
if they renege on affordable,
Okay, it's time to move
Okay.
on to this question,
All right.
please.
I'd like to finish my answer since you didn't give me a chance to do it. So the agreement that the Invest Atlanta is constructed, it's actually quite clever. It attaches the affordable requirement to the easement. So if the affordable component goes away, the easement goes away. And so that was their way of essentially, as I understand it, preventing exactly what your folks are mentioning that happened at the Gulch, where the Gulch could buy their way out of their affordable requirement. So I'll be honest with you, I have not necessarily seen the easement or whatever agreement. I just have what the folks approved, but that's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Ben Terry?
Yes, I hope Aaron Kirkpatrick is still here. Alex, your response to Aaron about his grandmother being injured severely in an accident was that these road improvements on Monroe were going to address that. Are you talking about, and while still reserving the remainder of my time, can I ask you, those improvements you're talking about, that's the Complete Streets program, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, it just seems to me disingenuous to say, yes, it's a dangerous corridor. Yes, people's grandmothers are getting run over. And yes, Portman is going to put 3,000 new cars a day on the road or 4,000 new cars a day on the road. And simultaneously, the fix for situations like Aaron's grandmother is to reduce Monroe from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, because that is part of the Complete Streets program, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So these are the deals you have to make with the devil in order to jam 10 gallons of you know what into a 5-gallon bag, which is what Portman is doing, because once they get the city council to approve it, the value of that land, and these are conjectural numbers on my part, but I'm going to make a wild guess that the value of that land goes from 200 million to $1 billion, because 8 people on city council voted for these 2 measures. But you know what? If they make that money, grandmothers will still get run over on Monroe Drive, and probably more grandmothers will get run over on Monroe Drive. I'm done. Thank you very much, Alex. And Alex, I want to thank you for saying you're going to vote no. I appreciate that. Do the best you can, okay?
So Ben, I would take that passion and that argument to the council members. Y'all know where I stand. So
okay, thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Ben. Elizabeth?
Yes, I live on Amsterdam east of Monroe and have for 38 years. It's a very long time. When I heard about the development, I was excited about it. Maybe I'll be the lone person here. You know, the buildings there now are these ugly warehouses, and people climb up a dirt hill, hanging on to tree roots to get up onto the belt line. And we deserve something nicer in that area than what we've got there. I think everybody, and when I heard about it, I thought, you know, this is terrific. I could walk down to the end of Amsterdam, have a coffee, a sandwich, walk onto the Beltline, Piedmont Park, Botanical Garden. The neighborhood just gets better and better. Obviously, it's too big. I think everybody would agree it's too big. I don't understand all the details of how we fight City Hall and fight Portman to get it smaller. It seems like we're outgunned. It seems like they're going to ramrod this thing through. Anyway, I guess I had one simple question. I thought in the first rendition it was going to be 9 stories tall. And Alex, you said the height has been lowered and it will be no more than 9 stories tall. So I don't get that part. 9 stories is way too tall. Still.
The original plans that were floated through started, I think, at 17 or 19 floors, and then one came back.
really?
That neighborhoods voted on, or MPU voted on, that was at 14, I believe, and now the proposal is 9. So that's why I said it's come down.
Well, you
Is that what
mentioned
you're asking?
towers. I didn't know if towers were separate from the apartment complex or.
No, I mean, I can show you. Let's see.
Yeah, 9 stories is still too tall.
So here, this is what it started off as.
Oh, geez.
Wait, no, this is what it started off as, a matter of fact.
That's
So,
ridiculous.
and then it came down in fall of 2023. I mean, this is just a different angle on it. April of 2024, after the conversations with the neighborhood. Now, I'll tell you, this is provided by Portman, so take this all with that grain of salt. But the red dashed lines show what I just showed you previously, and what vote was voted on by the NPU was this. And so, what here's the other angle of it, and then this is where the rendering of what it would be today. So it is not. It is, like I said, lower in that regard.
Okay.
I know.
Question.
It still sounds like it would block people's view of the park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Christine. Christine, did you?
Hello. Yes, hi. I am on Monroe, and I just wanted to thank Alex for representing, how we all feel, and offer that my sister and I actually have some security camera footage not long ago on a particularly bad traffic day on Monroe, involving a woman stopping her car in standstill traffic, hopping out of it, coming into our carport and urinating behind the car. I guess, such was her emergency. And if you feel like that would be helpful to share with your colleagues in your attempt to get some more votes, we would be happy to share it with you.
I mean, I'll accept anything that y'all have, and figure out how I craft what I present, share with them.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Thank you. Jacinta?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're also getting some feedback.
All right. Okay.
Are you in that room with everybody else? So you just need to tell everybody else to either mute everything or
Okay.
go
Can you
to
hear me
another.
now okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Debbie and thank you to Alex, and especially thank you, Alex, for stating that you publicly are against this project. I do appreciate that. I know we've been on your case a lot, so I hope you take it in the spirit that it was given, that we were fighting for a good cause. So I am delighted to hear that. Something Alice said from Orm Circle that I would like to address. She said that we were getting 50 feet. But I just want to point out, Portman doesn't own the abandoned road, the DOT owned the road, so he's not actually giving us the 50 feet. And from what I've heard is that he's building the buildings right by that 50 feet. So he's not even giving us the 20 feet. So I just wanted to clarify that.
So she was mentioning the transitional height plane, not the buffer side of that. So there's a 15-foot calculation for Highland Walk versus a 35 for Orm. So yeah,
yeah, but she did mention that we got 50 feet, which we're not getting.
She said 15. 15.
Oh, 15. Oh, sorry. Well, then I misunderstand that. The other question was, and just outside the 50 feet is some of the trees. Are they planning on taking any of these trees down, or do you know anything about the tree situation?
I do not. I do not. I'm trying to see if there was anything in the responses that they gave me around the trees, but I don't believe there was. So I'll see what I can
There's
find out.
such a thing as boundary trees, and so there's trees right there, right on that 50-foot mark. That kind of the roots are on our, we say on this side of and it's Highland Park, are on Highland Park, and some of them are on the other side. So they would be boundary trees, and I know there are some specific rules and regulations about those.
Thank you. I wrote that down.
Okay, and again, thank you. That's all. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
Robin Wagner.
Hi, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this. It's democracy in action. And I used to live in New England, and that was much more common up there. But I have lived in Virginia Highlands for 28 years and at my current house for 25 years, which is in the 500 block of Elmwood Drive. So just a couple blocks over from Amsterdam Walk. And in these 25 years, I put this in the chat, it has become almost impossible to get out at the end of our street onto Monroe Drive, never mind turning left, but just turning right because of 10th Street. And it wasn't like this 25 years ago. So I guess what I'm really thinking as I'm listening to this conversation is there are two really distinct tasks that we have to do. The first one is the more urgent one. What can we do? What are the incentives that are driving the other council members to possibly vote yes on this? And how can we be most effective as neighbors to prevent this vote from going the wrong way? That's the urgent task. And I realize that we might have to think outside the box, something more dramatic like the urination video, but not just that. That's the immediate task. And then the second task is, what is it, that we'd really want to see Amsterdam Walk be? And that's what a lot of tonight's conversation has been about, the technical points about how tall and all this other stuff, all very important. But not as urgent as the immediate, which is how to change this vote, because it will not matter. All of our rational, detailed feedback to you is going to be irrelevant if we cannot figure out a way to have the vote go a different way. So my question really, Alex, is, what do we know? What can we find out to reach the other council members effectively? And does it have to be something like a demonstration or guerrilla street stuff, which I'm all for if that's what it takes.
Okay, wrap up in 10 seconds, please.
Sorry, that was basically my question. What can we do for the urgent task at hand?
I think that's a great question. I mean, I think obviously using the logic points that have been raised, different council members are driven by different things. I mean, I wish I could give you a silver bullet, one size fits all response, but some are very pro development because they want development in their district. Some are very pro affordable housing, and some, I mean, it's a lot of different things. I think it's really going to be, I saw in the chat, someone saying that I'm going to contact my council member. It's finding people in their districts that they will listen to. I mean, a lot of them realize that there's not necessarily any consequences to upsetting our neighborhood because we don't vote for them. So, there's a lot of just welcome to politics. This is a full contact sport. And you're just gonna have to figure out each one. But it all starts with the merits, and in this case, y'all's demerits on the project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Navid?
Hi, this is Navid Arieh. Thank you so much, Alex, for being on the call. I joined a little bit late, so I might have missed what you initially kind of presented in terms of next steps. But I just wanted to clarify, in terms of what are the clear next steps for us as folks in the neighborhood to kind of petition the city on saying no to this? Is it just reaching out to the other city council members? I've heard now that you're opposed to it, but I'm just curious, is it just ensuring that a majority of the city council votes no, and that's it, or is there anything else that we can do to lobby the city?
That's pretty much it. I mean, I think the organizers have resources in terms of talking points, as well as the different members that are of each committee, and then obviously all of full council. So I think you start there with what they've put together. I mean, that is the right strategy.
And then can I ask real quick, just to clarify facts, has there been anything explicit about the number of rental units versus, have they made concessions about adding in condo units, or has it only been communicated about rental units at this point?
No, my understanding is it's just a function of units. The actual mix of it could be rental, it could be owner, it could be senior, it could be, that all gets figured out once they get closer to design. But in terms of zoning, it's just based on the number of units, not the category of units.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Kira Potter.
Hello, thank you for holding this meeting. I live on Monroe Drive, close to the park and 10th Street, and I am a little concerned about them putting in a traffic circle at Park Drive. A lot of people use that intersection to cross on bicycles, scooters, walking. I don't know how a traffic circle at Park Drive would actually benefit pedestrians. And once the light goes red at Park Drive, I can actually pull into my driveway or back in, which I prefer to do so I can get out the next day for work. Is that a certainty that they're putting a circle in? And if they are, what is going to be put in place so that pedestrians can cross the street?
Kira, I appreciate the question, but it's kind of outside the context of this meeting, and I'm definitely willing to connect with you. Like I said, we've got a team, a stakeholders meeting tomorrow. We'll have more information. I'll share that out in my March newsletter, which should be coming out soon, so you can at least see the design. But yeah, I'll also put the input mechanisms for that, public input mechanisms for that as well. So I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm just trying to focus on the Amsterdam Walk project for this.
I understand, but it pushes everything, the traffic down to just outside of their area. That's why I thought I would mention that. But thank you.
Thank you, Kira. And Karen Fay, that's the last hand that I see raised.
Yeah, I wanted to make two more points. These are probably secondary to all the points that have been made thus far, but I wanted to point out the impact on children and families. And this is one of the reasons why I am particularly, in addition to all the other logical reasons, upset about the loss of Amsterdam Walk as it exists now, because there are several children's activity spaces which are there now, which will not survive this coming up. And more, it seems like all of the larger spaces, the lower income or cost spaces where children's activities have thrived, we don't have those anymore in our neighborhoods, and we are forced to drive 20, 30 minutes outside into other neighborhoods to find things for children to do their activities, be it gymnastics or swimming or baseball or soccer or football or any of those types of sports fields. They are not in Virginia Highland. They are barely in Morningside. I wanted to point that out. And the second thing I think may be worth bringing up, Alex, is if there is a lot of additional housing that comes in, this will trigger a redistricting in the Midtown cluster sooner rather than later, because Midtown High School is full. It's absolutely full. There's not much more space to it. So just two more points to add in case some of the council members are more moved by these types of talking points than by height planes and square footage and parking and traffic.
You mean the glamorous, sexy conversation about transitional height plans? I did want to add one thing. There was one response. There was a question that was in the Google Docs about wanting to support kind of children's activities. And they did acknowledge that they did want to, they recognize that this is a family-friendly and community, and they would want to have a retail mix that supported that. I wish I could find that specific response. And then you said something, oh, come on.
The school district.
Yeah, that one, I actually had a conversation with our school board rep about that, Ken Zeff. And yeah, I mean, the projections for all properties, to be honest with you, all developments that have come online in the last 5 to 7 years have been woefully under projected or estimated. So they're kind of aware of that. I mean, it's a valid concern and objection that you're right.
I mean, this is the type of thing that might make other people to the north of us and to the south of us wake up and pay attention, because that's what will happen when the redistricting happens, is that people on the north side will be districted north, people on the south
Yeah.
side will be districted south.
You said something else that triggered a thought and I can't remember it now.
Oh, having to drive to get to children's playing fields, or swimming, or
No, I can't.
anyway, so many of these spaces, when I talk to them.
I remember now.
Yep,
So,
okay.
so yeah, thank you. Thanks for sticking with me on this one. So, as I mentioned earlier, the sale of the Beltline property it includes a commercial, affordable commercial. First time the city's ever tried to impose that. So there is a, what is it?
Yeah, but it can't be just, it has to be square footage wise, because otherwise they're gonna chop it up so they hit their quota with as small square footage as possible.
It says 12.5% of the commercial retail spaces in the project to be affordable, 35% of market rent for 99 years. So that's in there. We'll see what that actually translates to, but I did want to at least mention that.
Yeah, they just have to be big enough to have these, ballet schools and swim schools and
Gotcha. Yep.
such. Okay, thank you.
Great. There's one more hand raised from Aaron Kirkpatrick. Is that correct, Aaron? Aaron?
I think we should hear Aaron again.
Well, if this is Aaron and not Henry, then that would be okay. Aaron, last call.
Hey, sorry. I'm
There you go.
struggling with my but, thank you for this meeting. This has been very enlightening. Can you give us a very specific call to action of like when the vote is and what the ask is for the vote?
Well, again, I think lean on the organizers of I think a Better Amsterdam Walk. They've got, I think, all this summarized. The next possible action that the city could take is Monday at 11 o'clock, and that is zoning. And then the next one is Tuesday at 1:30, and that's the land use piece. So those are kind of the first rounds to focus on, and the members of the committee and the messaging.
And those are public meetings.
Yes, but remember, you can go and you can attend, you can follow them online, but you cannot speak because that public input process was part of the zoning review board hearings, as well as the comprehensive development plan quarterly hearing. So our code bars any additional public comment to a specific case beyond that. That's why the emails and the phone calls those you can do, but you just can't speak at a meeting.
But what is specifically is the request to other city council members to vote on or not to vote on?
Just say to reject it. I mean, that's the vote. To deny or vote no on the proposed amendment and land use change.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I apologize for calling Henry Aaron.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have, Alex, did you want to go through some of the questions that are in the chat?
I'm looking through this kind of quickly.
Some of the things have already been addressed.
Yeah. So talked about the affordability clause. Yeah, there were some questions in here about the community. And by community, I mean Virginia Highland Civic Association, MLPA, but officially the NPU vote is the only one that the city considers as a community position. But the conditions were, they were brought in as part of the application. That was what was before the NPU. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Asked about the trees. We talked about that. I have to find out more about that. Todd's questions about the street parking on driveways on Amsterdam Avenue. I don't know the answer to that, but I'll see what I can find out. Someone asked about the Highland Park, and then vis-a-vis the Orm Park requirements as well. So I'm going to look about that. Updated traffic study, the answer is no, because when they went to do the traffic study, it was for an even bigger project. So anything smaller, reduced wise, and then even the reduction and the shift over the residential does not meet the threshold of they're having to go back and do it again. Okay, let me keep looking. Does this take into account the road diet plans? I do not believe so. I have a big problem with VHA filtering these questions to Alex. I don't know how to respond to that, but that's how we quickly followed. Who are the council members supporting this? Don't know. Keep going. Who is the landscape architect for all the placemaking? That will be up to Portman when they get to that point in their design phase. What is Portman going to do to support safer streets and protect surrounding residential areas? I am not aware of any additional, for example, Ponce on Ponce. The Civic Association was able to negotiate quite a bit of transportation infrastructure investment by Portman in the area, but I'm not aware of anything similar here. They are doing some improvements along Evelyn, as I talked about, widening Evelyn, as well as creating the sidewalk. So I don't know if that qualifies for that consideration. More comments. I talked about the Evelyn Street, of how they're going to try and make that the primary entrance. A bunch of some rhetorical questions in here. How is more retail and no office factored into traffic loads? I think they did recalculate that. Talked about the affordable commercial requirement. So there's a question, why can't we do Monroe Safer, should implement that first before doing this? That's just a matter of sequencing. I mean, the ground shovels won't be in the ground on that with that until potentially next year. But y'all can use that as an argument to my colleagues. Oh, this is a great question. When traffic is backed up at the ticket booth, Christmas for Gardens, how do people living in apartments get in Evelyn if it's the main entrance? I don't know. I don't know. Technically, I don't know if y'all realize this or not, but park users are not supposed, I'm sorry, garden visitors are not supposed to be using the Monroe Drive entrance, and park users are not supposed to be using the Piedmont entrance by agreement between the gardens and the Conservancy.
Who knew?
Yeah, the conversation. What was that?
Who knew?
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, how are people supposed to know that, Alex?
There are security people on Piedmont at the garden entrance all the time, and there's signage there, and they will turn people away. Now, granted, you could turn in and say you're going to the garden, and they'll let you in, and lie. But that's, but yeah, that's. I thought that was kind of interesting too, Elaine. How is it appropriate to allow applications dramatically change after the period for public comment, so long as it does not increase in scope? And again, most applicants won't risk doing that if they don't want to blow up an agreement and a supportive vote that the community has given them, and risk council members also abandoning support because they've kind of betrayed the community. So, but it is procedurally okay. Are there any decision rights for the community remaining? The answer is no more votes that will be taken from the community. All surface parking under the buildings, they're under the buildings. It's not a separate deck according to the renderings in the site plan. There was some legal question that I do not know the answer to that Florence Lacroix brought. So I don't know if there are any resources here in the chat that can respond to that one. Wow, there are a lot.
Alex, may I ask, because I have talked to city ordinance and others, but my understanding is, and y'all correct me, and I looked at it from supportive thing, is that right now it is C1 zoning. So it is
C1 commercial, yeah.
I'm sorry, C1 commercial. So, and Alpern's gonna sell it. They're not keeping it. So if this mixed use doesn't happen, somebody else will do it and be able to do a lot more density with the Z1 zoning. However, the Beltline overlay district will limit it to a certain amount. But my understanding is they don't have to do an Evelyn Street expansion, and the traffic would be worse. And if, I don't know if that's been evaluated, but maybe it's the lesser of the two evils. I'm worried about this when Halpern does it to a commercial developer. Does anybody know about this one
That
issue?
was brought forward by Portman during their initial meetings with the community, that right now with the zone C1, that they can build by right, no zoning, rezoning required. Obviously accommodate are complying with the transitional height planes and buffers and things like that, but they can build over 1 million square feet of office right now without doing anything. So
I think
yeah,
I have the answer if anybody wants it.
type it in the chat, because I'm going to keep going through the questions here. If the two
Please, no more
committees,
interruptions.
what was that?
I'm sorry, 1 million square feet with Z1 versus how
People.
much for the other total? For if the mixed use, their proposal.
They're proposing 1.1 million right now.
Okay, but they get a road and some other stuff. Okay, thank you. That
Yeah.
just wanted to know.
If the two committees reject the applications, does it still go to full council? So that's a great question. Procedurally, committees can continue to hold the paper. If they hold the paper, nothing happens. And technicality of it is at the end of this year, because it's the end of a term, everything expires and dies and has to be reintroduced in January. If they vote to deny it, it goes before full council, and full council can still vote to approve it. The only thing that comes out of committee is a recommendation. So those are the possible paths. There is another more even extreme, but that won't happen in this case. And there's an action that a committee could take if the full council did it, and it would prevent another application for a certain period of time. But that's highly unlikely. So I would not try and pursue that one. I'm going to keep looking. No, I don't see any other questions. How about some concessions on addressing road conditions? I think the opportunity for that was when they were in conversation with the community, they tend to do that when they're trying to get yes votes at the NPU. But again, there will not be another MLPA. I'm sorry, NPU vote. Well, I haven't. That's a rhetorical question. Okay, they asked the question about process. I got that one. Go Henry. Ooh, lots of Go Henrys. I'm flying through these really quickly, so hopefully I'm getting the questions. Does anyone have any data on how full the current mixed-use developments are with residents and commercial? I do not. Maybe someone else on the call does. Traffic circle. What stops Portman from another bite at the apple in 3 or 4 years to call back the concessions? Actually, that would require a council action. So anything is possible. So there was a property on 14th that got approval, and then they came back to try and increase density, but we voted against that. So Alex, what are you proposing instead of the current proposed plan? I'll be honest with you, I don't have an alternate proposal. Still looking. There's a question about Ken Zeff not being, he is our school board rep. I think that's who I said earlier, so I don't know what that question was.
If you live south of Virginia Avenue, he may not.
Oh, that's right, because of the new district lines. Yeah, sorry. So south of Virginia, the council rep it's District 2. And I don't know who your school board member is. That's
It's Katie Howard, Alex.
There you go, Katie Howard. So definitely, if you got concerns about the school capacity question, definitely reach out to Katie Howard as well as Ken Zeff. But Amsterdam is Virginia is the dividing line. Okay. Okay, question about worried that Amsterdam Walk will lead to more similar developments. What's to stop developers from trying to buy out homeowners of 3 connecting streets? Yeah, I mean, we've been fighting that potential at Crest Hill and 10th for over a decade now. You know, the trick is whether someone can assemble properties. But yeah, if they can, you know, that is another rezoning and land use battle that we as a community have to face. They're asking, I'm not going to answer that question. Okay, Better Amsterdam. Yeah, someone asked if I can do anything in committee, so time runs out. I mean, I again, that'll be my ask. That will be one of my asks. But the folks are wanting to move this out. We'll see. Okay, I think that's all of questions that I saw, unless, I mean, I was flying through them really quickly. If I missed any that anyone wants to lift, either just retype it in the chat or actually, Debbie, this is your meeting, so I should let you try.
Oh, no, we're sharing this. There is one hand raised for someone that has not spoken previously, Bill Bozart. Bill, I'm sorry that you had to wait so long.
Sure. Hey, everybody. And hey, Alex. I think Matt's on the call too. I saw him earlier. This might be a fitting final comment. Let me relate some of my experience as a neighborhood advocate 25 years ago. There was a proposal to put a transit-oriented development at the MARTA station at Lindbergh, and very similar to the situation. A very well-connected developer that happened to be Carter and Associates was able to successfully lobby the council to get the votes, despite the fact that the NPU had rejected it, the ZRB had rejected all of the similar characteristics. We took legal action. And I would say to the leadership of Virginia Highland and Lennox Morningside that you need to have that as an option. There's a very good chance that Alex and his colleagues will not be successful in stopping this. We sued them. The suit lasted a couple of years. It went to Fulton County Superior Court. Was never decided in the courts. The judge just let it linger. Was it successful? Technically, no, but in reality, it was very successful because time sometimes is your friend in these situations. Things changed. Originally, the proposal had been to build 11,000 parking spaces on top of a transit station. And we sued MARTA. We didn't sue the developer, we sued MARTA. I would suggest that you be prepared to consult an attorney and see what your options are there. The mere threat of that is not going to make them back away, but it may give you some leverage down the line. So that was my experience a long time ago. I was the named plaintiff in the suit. The neighborhood association was also a plaintiff, and we pulled in a number of other parties. So I plant that seed to see if anybody would really like to consider it in this situation.
Thanks, Bill. Alex or Matt Westmoreland, who has been on the call listening, do either of you have any closing comments?
I want to answer one question. So Alex, as you find out which council members support the development, can you notify us? I will try. I'll be honest with you, when they're going to vote against the district council members tend to be very coy about it. So, I mean, I'm not sure that either Matt or I will be able to suss that out. But to the extent that we can, we'll try and let y'all know. But I'm not optimistic that people will show their cards if that's their intent. So I think y'all just need to do your full court press and we'll see where this lands. So I don't know if Matt wants to say anything, but I'll say, just kind of on our behalf. I mean, I think we really appreciate the engagement from the community. I know this has been a really frustrating process. I know that I have frustrated a lot of y'all, but I've had my strategy along the way in terms of trying to stay in the game, continue talking so that I'd be aware of when things were happening. And now we find ourselves at this point of it. And this is where the rubber meets the road. And I think y'all have your roadmap ahead of you. I have mine. And I've seen things go both ways. So I would say work hard, don't be overconfident, but don't be don't be surprised if it doesn't go the other way as well. But we're just going to have to do our best at this point. I've got some questions that I'm going to research. I will figure out how to get the responses that we got from Portman out to everybody. It'll be through the same channels it went through last time, because it just seems like the NPU and the civic associations have far more reach and faster reach. So just stay tuned for similar communications from them. Again, if there are any just new questions, please focus on that. I got a handful of those today. Just email me and I'll put that in the chat. But again, just want to thank everybody. This is how the sausage is made, and y'all are doing everything that you're supposed to be doing.
Great. Thanks. Thank you. Matt, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll say a quick comment. First of all, good evening, everybody, and forgive my hoodie. This is my 9 p.m. outfit on a Monday evening after a 7-hour council meeting. Alex is better dressed than I. Yeah, unlike Alex, I chair the zoning committee, and I serve on the community development human services committee. So I'll actually have 3 votes on this. I have communicated my intentions to many of you who have emailed, and it's been referenced here a couple times. And so I think my only other comment is I'll continue talking with our colleagues, just like Alex. And I appreciate, I guess the only other thing is I'm a 37-year resident of Morningside, Virginia Highland, or Midtown, and I'm well chronicled in the challenges that we face on this quarter. So I'll continue working with Alex to talk to our colleagues.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks for being here tonight. So thank you all for joining us. Special thanks to Kevin Cronin, who acted as timekeeper, and Kay Stevenson and Marla Johnson, who acted as co-hosts with me tonight. Just a reminder that a copy of the video from tonight's meeting will be uploaded on YouTube tomorrow. Give us some time. It does take a while to do that upload. And you should be able to find it by Googling NPU-F Amsterdam Walk. That's how we will identify it for you. Don't forget that you can make a copy of the chat by clicking on the 3 dots that are in the chat window. On some computers, it may be at the top, some may be at the bottom, but you can save it. And a reminder that the next NPU-F meeting is Wednesday, March 19th at 7 p.m. Hope to see you all there. I'm going to leave the room open for a few minutes while folks leave. If you have any additional process questions, someone should be here to answer them. So thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Close that up. God, there's a lot in the chat. Close that up. Drop off.